Welcome to the cityCURRENT Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. Our mission at cityCURRENT is to power the good, and we do that through positive media, events, and philanthropy. This show features interviews with a mix of business and community leaders who discuss important efforts, trends, lessons learned, and ways to get involved so we can learn more about our community and work together to make a difference. Now, on to the show. We love having guest speakers and experts come on, sharing their story and all of their knowledge. And that's definitely the case with our good friend Javier Peña. He's been a cityCURRENT speaker in the past, and we are pleased to have him. He's a public speaker, a leadership advisor, an award-winning creative director and composer of original music for national television commercials. You've seen him on the documentary For Once in My Life, and we get to talk all about Leading in Tune. It's a leadership program that he has created. So, Javier, how are you doing, buddy?
Good. Thank you so much, Jeremy. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me.
Give us some of your background, especially tied to For Once in My Life.
Well, thank you so much. I was born and raised in Caracas, Venezuela. As you can hear by my accent, I'm from the South, but way down south in South America. So I studied music there, and I moved to Miami when I was 25. And I went to a job interview for a choir director position at the time. And I didn't know. I was very confident, feeling very confident going to this job interview, until the moment I found out that the choir was made up of people with mental and physical disabilities. Now, I've never in my life even had a conversation, a close encounter with someone with a mental or physical disability. So I thought, well, I don't know how to do this job. I don't know what I'm doing here. And then, but when I got there was a group of young people that work in a place where they did flags for the manufacture flags for the U.S. And then they had this music activity, and there was a black piano inside of the music room. I got there, I was very nervous. I just said, I need to leave here as soon as possible. When I got there, there was this piano that I opened and started to play. The piano was out of tune, and then I started to play. But at that moment, when I started to play, they began to smile. And at that precise moment, all the disabilities disappeared. Because I also have my own disabilities. I barely spoke English. I'm still learning to speak English. But at the time, it was really difficult. So that musical moment created something very special, and the disabilities were gone. And the piano became a translator. So what I thought it was just going to be a few months perhaps, because it was a part-time job, it became 15 years, over a decade of working with this group of people that really transformed my life. They not only learned to sing, but they also learned to play instruments. They didn't have any musical experience. And then for many years I had this dream of conducting a large band, and then I tried to pull musicians together, but you know how hard it is to put a band together. And then, but when I got there, I saw the passion they have for music, and I thought, well, this could be a great opportunity, but they didn't know how to play. But so we took the time to teach him, and then we created this large band, about 30 people on stage, and it became a legitimate performing band with all people with all kinds of disabilities, mental and physical disabilities. So we did a documentary, a film, which is called For Once in My Life, that you can watch on Amazon Prime tonight. It's a great film. It's a very inspiring film. And then we actually went to Nashville and received 2 major recognitions in the Nashville Film Festival. We were truly honored because Nashville is Music City. And then that took the documentary. It was on PBS, and it was for a while it was on Netflix, and now it's on Amazon that you can watch it. And so the time that I was there, after I left the group, because I'm no longer working with the group, after those 15 years, people started to approach me and ask questions about, like, how do you put this group together? I mean, my work with the band. But these people were not musicians. They were business leaders, business owners, leaders from the nonprofit world or the education. And they all have in common one thing. They wanted to know how it was possible to bring a group of people that were so different, that they have all kind of personal challenges, serious challenges, and then make them develop their full potential, and also make them work as a team. And that's when I really realized that you don't need to be a musician, you don't need to be a singer or play an instrument or anything like that to learn powerful leadership lessons from music. And that's what I started to create. I created the Leading in Tune program, which is using principles from music, because for most people, music is a tool that makes them feel good, right? I mean, everybody loves music. It's like Plato said 2,000 years ago, music gives wings to the mind, flight to the imagination, and life to everything. So he was just very clear about how powerful music is. But what I tell leaders is you can change the way you think about music beyond an entertaining tool, which is wonderful, but you can use those principles to apply it into your organization. How can you lead people? How can you create your organization and treat your organization like or your team like an orchestra? So that's what the Leading in Tune program is, and that's what I've been teaching and sharing people, and it's very exciting.
And I love the fact that, one, you can go see, obviously, For Once in My Life, and the award-winning documentary, and you see the human aspect of the story that you're talking about, and it's inspiring, like you said. I mean, you walk away, especially in this culminating moment, which I'm not going to give away, and you're just like, yes, this is amazing. To see the humanization of that, but then, like you're talking about, taking those lessons and applying them in a business context to now realize, okay, how can I take those experiences and now translate them over to where you can become more successful? You can take all of these different individuals and create a symphony, an orchestra that creates real results for you and your business. And so talk about on your end, let's start with making yourself a better leader using music. Give us one or two kind of teasers, if you will, when it comes to how you can be a better leader through music.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. Well, the number one thing is that music is really powerful to connect with people. You know, is a human, I call it the magnet that we all gravitate to. It doesn't matter who you are, your ethnicity, your social status, music is something that we all feel attracted to. And as a leader, one of the priorities of you as a leader is to make people connect with you. You connected with them because you have a vision in your heart, and you want people to help you achieve that mission or that vision that you have in your heart. Whether you have a business, non-profit, a mission, you have something in your heart that you want to communicate, and you need people to help you with that. So the primary role of a leader is to connect with people. And if you take music as that great connector, well, one of the things that music does is it embraces both the rational part and the emotional part. For instance, before the invention of the fMRI, meaning the functional MRI, it was believed that music only influenced the right side of the brain, meaning when we process the emotion. But if I put you, Jeremy, under an fMRI and I let you listen to your playlist and your favorite song, well, we're going to see something like the 4th of July with fireworks on the screen, because there is a lot of brain activity, including the areas, especially the areas that you use for planning and for making decisions, which are the areas that any leader uses. So the lesson here, really taking the lesson from music, is that you have, as a leader, need to be able to connect with your team from the rational level and also from the emotional level. And this is, I see this over and over when I talk to leaders. There is a gap. And we talk right now a lot about retention of talent, attracting talent and retention of talent. And the number one reason, it has not so much to do with the economics or how much money somebody makes in one place or the other. That's one of the factors. But that's not the primary or the only factor, because it's how people feel connected to your mission, how people feel connected to your core values, how people feel in an environment that could be toxic or not so productive, or maybe doesn't feel them in a way that they want to be feel and stimulated. So that's what music does. Because if you take that analogy with music, it's kind of like when you choose a favorite song, you gravitate to that song and you feel really good about it. But there are other songs that you just don't like. There are people who love certain kind of music, certain genres, but other kind of music they dislike. They just don't feel connected too much with it. Well, in the same way, we as a leader need to be able to connect with your team with a proper music genre that will move them. It's not that they need to decide what music genre, because you are the leader who's actually setting the tone for that, but you have to make sure that they feel connected with that. And in a practical way, you have to know as a leader, well, I'm providing them with the necessary tools that they need to do their job. That's what I call the physical aspect, the rational aspect of music, the physical aspect that you can measure. You can put that on a device and you can measure the decibels of a music, the air molecules and all that. That's kind of like the physical aspect of music. But I call the other aspect of music, the other dimension, which is the spiritual dimension, which is the one that really makes a profound difference, and then is how it affects our feelings, our emotions. And in the practical way, going back to be you as a leader, you have to make sure you're touching that emotional part of your people, because we all make decisions based on emotions. And then making sure you're touching and you're creating that connection is very, very important to create that engagement that you want as a leader with your team.
One of the things that has still stood out to me, you spoke in Memphis years ago, but you mentioned the fact that everyone has a place for their solo, but then also where they're kind of the background, and very much like a symphony and orchestra, you can't all have solos playing at the same time. Otherwise it sounds discombobulated. And so everyone has a place to be in front and everyone has a role to play in the back. And so talk about kind of knowing your role and when it's your time for your solo.
Yeah, that's a great. A few years have passed by, and you still remember that. That's wonderful. And again, we using music as a metaphor, and metaphors are really powerful because just as a preamble, when we use a metaphor, and is that there are three parts of our brain that engage in the metaphor, and is the first one is the memory, because when you're talking about a memory, a metaphor, you pull the memory, the visual memory. When you say, somebody knocked it out of the park, you're not talking about baseball, you're talking about someone who exceeded in a project. Well, when we're using the music metaphor, the part of your brain that pulls the memory brings the emotion with it. Also, the cognitive part is like how you relate that metaphor of music with the things that you're doing. That's a cognitive. And also the other part of the brain that engages is the executive processing, how you make decisions. And all these three things is almost like three wheels on your brain running around, rolling and connecting. That's why music is very important, and even after all these years you remember that metaphor. But the point is that when you look into an orchestra, a musician that plays by himself or herself at a street corner doesn't have the same experience of a musician playing with an orchestra. When a musician plays in a large ensemble, it goes through three musical moments. I call them musical moments. And one is the solo moments. The solo moments is the portions of the song when a particular instrument is heard over the rest of the other instruments. For instance, if you like rock music, you will know that the electric guitar is the one who does most of the solos. Now, the solos, something important about the solos is they are supposed to be brief. They're not supposed to be long, right? Imagine a guitar solo of 10, 15 minutes. A few songs have those, but they're very uncommon. And it will be really unsustainable for the musician and also for the audience. So the solo moments are important, but brief. The second part, the second musical moment that a musician experiences in an orchestra is the support moments. And these are the moments that most musicians, they spend most of the time in these support moments, because that's what creates the sound of the orchestra. Now, if you are not musically trained, it could be very hard to distinguish the sound of one instrument from the other, because they all blend together to create that signature sound that the orchestra produces. In the same way, when that happens, it has all that application in your business. And let me finish with the third musical moment, which is the resting moments. And these are the moments when musicians are not playing. In the score, you have a little tiny horizontal line that literally means rest, put your instrument down. Now, when you apply this into your organization, you have solo moments. And solo moments are important for you as a leader when people hear you, and that's great. But you have to remember that they should be brief. They should be something that it shouldn't take the time. You shouldn't be taking the visible lead. You're still the leader, but your voice shouldn't be the ones who does all the solos all the time. So they should be brief. The part that the musicians, including the leaders, should spend most of their time is supporting their team. And it's not about a single instrument, it's about the whole orchestra, how you can support your team in a way in the background, not even being noticed, but your sound is relevant to that sound that your orchestra, your organization creates. And the third one is the one that we struggle the most. We struggle the most with these resting moments, because it's kind of like you don't feel important while you quote unquote are not doing something. And especially type A personality leaders, they always want to be heard, they always want to know that they are present, but it's the resting moments that a leader needs to take. And the resting moments could apply to not only to actually physical resting time, disconnecting from work, taking time off, that applies to that, but also in your day-to-day operations, it applies, because when you are in a meeting, taking a resting moments is like you're going to stay quiet in that meeting and you're going to let somebody else from your team take the solo, and you're going to give that person that solo. So it's not just you with the electric guitar playing all the time. So whatever your instrument is, keeping these in mind into the perspective, because as a leader, you are like an arranger, a musical arranger. You're orchestrating the sound of your musicians to create that sound that is pleasant, and then incorporating these three moments is very, very essential to bring the harmony that your team and your organization needs to have.
Carry that forward, because another word that goes along with this is harmony, and with that, work-life balance. So how does music play a role in work-life balance?
Everyone talks about balance. I just get really excited, because let's define. And you heard my explanation about a metaphor. So life-work balance is actually a metaphor, and this is a metaphor that has been used for over 30 years in the corporate world. This is a phrase, and leaders say phrases, and the people who have been led also heard those phrases, and they repeat that, because that's what leaderships do. So I've been hearing this work-life balance for many, many years. Again, I don't have 30 years in the working place, but anyways, I've heard that for a long time. But it really, when I started to study this, I started to see there was a discrepancy, because every time I asked someone about work-life balance, they said, I don't feel good about it. I'm still trying to get my work-life balance. I will get it some days. It's almost this goal that is always out there that you're always striving for. So what happened is that when you think about the metaphor, it's very a lot of people. Let me ask you this: like when you think about work-life balance, what image comes to mind? What's the first picture that comes to mind?
A scale, like the scale of, the legal scale, the writer trying to be even, which
yes, exactly possible. Right. The scale. Actually, when you go to Google and you put balance, and under images, that's the first selection of images that are going to come. It's a scale. That's how we associate that. Some people say it even tightrope, but most people think it's a scale. So the scale, what happened is that the scale is a symbol that hasn't been associated with justice for over 2,000 years. Any lawyer can tell you that. You go to the court and you see the scale. What happened is that when you're trying to achieve life-work balance or work-life balance, either way, you say, well, I'm very stressed out at work, so I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to go on vacation, and you say, oh, I'm feeling good, And then when you get back to the office, then you get more projects, or your kids get sick, or this coworker resigns. And these back and forth in this scale, it's never even, at least it's not sustainable. So what happened is that in your mind, as you continue perpetuating this metaphor, well, you become the indicted person, you become the prosecutor, and you become the jury. And most of the time, the verdict is guilty. And that's why a lot of people feel guilty when they think about their lack of work-life balance in the way they're living their lives. So there is a quick starting point to go into a different direction to make you feel better. And when you feel better, you start thinking in a more clear way. And it's just changing the word balance for harmony. Instead of work balance, which is unattainable. And I always tell people to think about the song of Mission Impossible. So every time you think about work-life balance, I want you to think about the theme of Mission Impossible. We cannot play because, it's a copyright restrictions, but think about that. It's just not it's something that you cannot sustain. It's mission impossible. And then if you try every episode, you're gonna find the same challenge. But harmony is different because harmony comes from music, and harmony is fluid. In music, you don't say, well, I'm gonna create this song, and I'm gonna have this song. It's gonna be 50% brass and 50% strings. It just doesn't work that way. It depends on the song. It's very fluid. You don't use a scale where you're creating music, when you are putting music together and incorporating instruments. So harmony, it's very personal, because a song that could be harmonious to you may not be so harmonious to me, but in your case it is. Because, for instance, a young mom who's a professional, and I mean a mother with young children who's a professional, and has a lifestyle that requires a lot of attention to her kids, it's not the same that one that have their kiddos gone already or doesn't have any children. So the level of harmony is very different from one mom or from the other, from one professional to the other. So when you start introducing this concept, even by just changing the language, you start training your brain to create a new metaphor. And that new metaphor is going to start you giving some ideas to say, well, how can I harmonize? What kind of resting moments can I incorporate? What kind of solos do I need to give to somebody else? Or maybe take my own solo moments, because sometimes we don't take solo moments. And then all these things are important to really think about how you can incorporate harmony in your life in a practical way each and every day, starting with the way you say those words instead of so I'm going to challenge you and your audience to avoid saying work-life balance and say work-life harmony, because you're going to start to feel better almost immediately.
Give me one more tip or favorite, just little bit of recommendation when it comes to just using music to become a more effective communicator and leader.
Yeah, it's very important, because when you communicate as a leader, one of the most important tools that you have is communication, and in this case, verbal communication. I know we use a lot of text messages and written communication, and in organizations, sometimes the written communication is overused. But at the end of the day, the emotion is hardly ever perceived in the written message, at least in the corporate world. So as a leader, one of the most important tools that you have is your verbal communication, how you come across to people. So one of the things, for instance, I do some workshops when I put a group of people in an organization, and one of the there's an exercise that I play, and then I play certain kinds of music, and people say, well, when I play that kind of music, they feel a certain way, and I say, well, I feel these, I feel sad, melancholic, or whatever the case might be for that particular tune. And then I play another song, and then and they say, well, I feel happy, energetic, or whatever, which is in some cases even an opposite kind of feeling. And then they discover that it's the same song, it's the same motif, it's the same. We do that in movies all the time. I mean, in movies you see and hear the same thing in different scenes. It's the same notes. It's just with a different scene to make you feel something different. What's the lesson here? And this is coming from music. Well, you can use the same words, exact same words, and evoke different feelings from people who are listening to you. And what happens to most of us in our communication is that we focus on the rational part. We say, oh, I'm going to this meeting, I'm going to have this conversation with this individual, and I'm going to highlight my talking points, and I want to look very organized, very cohesive, and this is what I'm going to say. And that's one side of the column, if you will. I have a tool that I give to people, which is you have two columns, and one side of the column is just the rational part. You're applying, this makes sense. What I'm going to tell you, it connects with something rational. But what most of us forget totally, and I see that all the time, forget about it, it's just they don't think about the other side of the brain, which is the emotion, the other column, which is what kind of emotion you want to evoke from someone when you are talking to them. And Maya Angelou said this great quote. She said, people will forget what you did, people will forget what you said, but people will never forget how you make them feel. So as a leader, it's very important primarily to focus on what kind of emotion do I want to evoke, because no musician goes on stage to play anything if it doesn't have in mind or I want people to jump, in a rock concert, or be very energetic, or cry if it's a sad song, your mom or whomever musician is, or I want you to feel whatever kind of feeling, but the feeling is at the forefront of every decision that is made, every note that is played. So it should be also at the forefront of every word that you say as a leader.
Where do we go to find more information and to get you to come out and speak to events?
I decided to start offering content to people about music and leadership, and it's you can just go to the website and subscribe. It's free, and then if you want more information, you can just contact me directly. But there is a form there in the website, and the website is leadingintune.com. That's the website, leadingintune. Or if not, you can also go to javierpeña.net. Either way, it's going to take you to this website, and then when you go there, if you subscribe, actually I have a training there that is for free for people about this topic that I just mentioned about the communication, because again these will really help you, because when you focus again on the feeling, so I have the whole training that says three ways to master the language of music to communicate effectively. Three tips that I'm just going to mention it then, but in the course, in the free course, you can just get in there. It's the tone, the tempo, and the dynamics, and you just need to go there and to learn more about it.
There you go. Leadingintune.com. So leadingintune.com. Javier, thank you for all you do. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing your expertise. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for watching the City Current Show, which is produced by City Current with funding provided by Lipscomb & Pitts Insurance, a Higginbotham company. To learn more about each of the guests, to share your stories of others, leading by example, or to watch past episodes and more media focused on good news, visit our website at citycurrent.com or follow along on social media using the handle or hashtag CityCurrent. We look forward to seeing you again soon, and thank you for all you do to power the good.